Good, man. How you been? You been doing good? That's what's up. Small little inquiry, you know. Uh, excursion, if you may. What are you a slave to? We're all a slave to something. You know, if it's not money, fame, food, peace, religion, something. I used to think that I was better than people because I wasn't a slave to anything, so to speak. But now that I see, I'm a slave to freedom. I'm a slave to a thing that I never had. A slave to a thing that I must have. Something that would not only make me feel like I'm doing something. I think it's the aspect of freedom, the concept of it tends to spark in my heart because no matter whatever I'm doing, it feels like I'm a slave to something. Isn't if you're working, if you're cleaning, if you're lazy, and if the way I put it, if you think about it, you're a slave to something, right? Either you're a slave to love, you're a slave to adapting, you're a slave to knowledge. And there should be and always be a negative connotation on the word slave, but I want to understand why am I like this, Why do I want to be free from the shackles that I don't know I even have on? Right? It's not the oppression of how I look or who I am. It's more of a mental anguish of me seeing that I'm stuck in poverty. Mentally, physically, I may adapt. I might lift weights. I may be bulky. It may be optimal. I may be buff, or slim fit, or athletically built in multiple areas. But for some reason, I feel stuck. Right? We all get those moods or those type of vibes where you're just sad for no reason. You can't even tell people why you're sad because you don't even know yourself. But then sometimes it's not the fact that you're sad. It's the fact that you get to be sad when others don't have the time to feel those emotions. You know? Sometimes I used to hate the labels that was given to me. But as they say it more and more, I tend to believe it. But that shouldn't be the right thing to do, is it? Because somebody calls you it multiple times out of the day, you tend to believe it. Avoiding your problems, running away from your problems. I love to do that. They call me avoidant. Avoidant of emotion. Avoidant of understanding. And that's why I always say I'm not truly a good person in the way that people perceive me. And it's not that I want a redemption. It's more if I want to understand why I am the way I am. We all have our narcissistic tendencies or our arrogant tendencies. But then I come to see that it's more than that. I couldn't even crack a fake smile for people anymore. I was like, dang, why can I not smile? Why do anything, Why encapsulate yourself in a point of being just to feel like it's nonsense, you know? Uh, Fence sitting, they say. Not everything has to be contradicting or so thought provoking that it's, you know, philosophical. But there's many beings that do the things that I do. There's many people that say the things that I say, maybe in a different way. So maybe the indifference of that is why people want to so-called be different. But if we're all different, then we're all the same, is it not? But if we all have our same style and it's saturated, then we're all the same. If we're all thrifting, trying to be different, and we're all trying to have a vibe of an earthy type of tone, or we're all trying to be spiritual or philosophical, so to speak, are we not the same? Not in the genetics department, but in the visual cortex of our brain. We realize who we are, right? You find your kin, you find your group. And what is your group? The group that believes the same thing that you do. But then some people don't want a group so they can be a loner, so they can be different, so they can be the person that nobody else is. Oh Lord, not that boy. But even with that, you gotta just do nothing. Once you figure out life, you're completely bored. It's like playing a game. If you finish all the levels, and you can just go back and play them again with all your abilities and all your perks, it becomes easy. It becomes boring, and then you throw the game away, or you just stop playing. Even on an open world, if you figured out everything in the open world, and you have enough money to buy everything in the game and shop, and all you can do is just go around and massacre random NPCs, it tends to get boring. The dopamine spikes tends to plateau, flatten out to the point where there's no more incline. There's no more incline. What does it equate to? Equilibrium. Passion. Passion invokes creativity. But even as I say that, mentally you're putting me in a box completely already, no matter what I say. You know? Creating one or trying to find one that I'm closest to. You know? Oh, he's like a spiritual dude who talks about life and emotions and that's it, you know? No matter what I do, I will be put in a box. No matter how big the box is, it still is one. So, I won't try to hold you for so long. We all idolize something. It could be your hair, a being, a feeling of nostalgia. Or just nothing. You know, nothing's truly funny until you understand why you can laugh. sometimes, laughing was always in like a not a biohack, but just a natural thing that we do. But I never understood it. Something was enjoyable for me, so I make sound. Audibly, I laugh or I smile to show that I enjoy something. And like the most natural things was always so weird to me. Like as you explain the simplest things. We live in a box to protect us from the animals we used to eat, not for enjoyment. We watch movies of other beings that act something that's not real to invoke emotion that sometimes we cannot explain. We take pictures to encapsulate the things that we cannot see for long on a box or a rectangle that tends to hold a moment in time still. We go to a deep area with a liquid we cannot breathe in to swim and try to survive for enjoyment that we call a pool. We explain things in a made-up language that we have created that only a certain amount of people understand and some people can learn. We wear clothing to hide our misfortunes or our so-called organs because it is shown as disrespectful or disgusting to others, even though we all have the same social norms. We have cultivated a mass amount of people to think the same thing, but evidently some people hate others because we are all the same, but we look different. That being hates him because he's a shade darker than him. That being hates him because he speaks a language he cannot understand. That person hates him because the people that were related to him, that looked just like him, caused the war thousands of years ago. That being hates him because his people enslaved his people for thousands of years, but he's telling them to get over it, even though they have been eaten, killed, and brandished as objects. Deuce, come. This being right here is a companion, even though he's a small one. We used to have bigger ones to help us hunt, help us find shelter. Now they are just companions and pets that we feed and dress up as humans. For entertainment, for enjoyment. We do things that so-called are normal because it hits here in our heart or, emotionally. We do a lot of things. Being enlightened or so-called woke is a detrimental thing when you're trying to hide yourself from the insanities of the world. Being too woke gets annoying. Being too brash or being too dim-witted becomes preposterous. There's so many things, if you so-called break it down in a simplistic view, it sounds crazy to a person that is not so-called human. Imagine explaining that to a different being not of this earth. We're probably one of the most dumbest creatures that so-called exists. There's no way. Everything is so vast, and we're so conceited and narcissistic that we think we're the only living beings that have consciousness on the level that we think. We could be light years behind someone or something. But all theories become a conclusion when it sounds crazy, We tend to discard or scrutinize people for thinking differently in a way of, what is he yapping about? Here you go again, But we don't have time to do the things like that because you got bills to pay. Shit like that. So I say it almost every video. You got bills to pay, you got people to feed, you got people to succeed to. It's not to be rude, but everybody has their own life. Not everybody can spare $1 to a homeless man. Not everybody can pick up that trash can that's in the middle of the road. The debris that's in our mind is so-called physical, As you miss people and you reminisce, it's a feeling of nostalgia, not screwing for. This flower has a full-on ecosystem of insects and animals, but we pick them up to obtain its beauty for a monetary time. And then as we planted it, it tends to die off, wilt. But we had it enough to enjoy its beauty, so to speak. Might hold off on the so-called deep conversations for a little while, because not that it's not boring or entertaining, it's just, you get a feeling of if you're doing too much or you're doing too little. So you're in a pickle, bro, Everything is corny or shady, so, I don't know. I want to cultivate something bigger than what it is now. But I feel like maybe the music would take off way better than this. But we'll figure it out. But I might go for a little walk. I might record a video on that walk. We don't know. But this one is oh Lord. But this one's something small. But yeah, we'll see you then.